I was standing in line at the Ace Hardware on 5th and Holloway, holding a sprinkler head in one hand and a receipt for a $3 hose washer in the other, when I saw it. Her story. Public. Not a message. Not a mistake. A story. A selfie, taken in our bedroom. No, my bedroom. Still messy from the night before. My shirt, the navy one with the frayed collar she always said made me look trustworthy, was crumpled in the background, half hanging from the cedar bench I built from scratch last summer. She was grinning. Lipstick bright, cheeks flushed, her shoulder bare under the slip of a familiar lace strap. The caption sat just beneath her chin, like a tattoo she didn't even feel anymore. Upgrade complete winking face. Behind her, lounging against my side of the bed like a discount cologne ad, a man I'd never seen. Tank top, chain, smug little half smile. One arm folded behind his head like he lived there. And from the look of it, maybe he thought he did. I didn't say a word, didn't gasp or scroll or zoom in. I just locked the screen. The man behind me coughed, impatient. I stepped forward, paid for the sprinkler head, and nodded when the cashier asked if I needed a bag. Back in the truck, I sat for exactly 12 seconds. Then I turned the key, drove home, parked in the driveway, walked through the front door, and set my keys on the kitchen counter. Not loudly, not dramatically. I just placed them down, neatly between the dog-eared copy of Bon Appetit and the soy candle she bought last fall. She wasn't home. I knew she wouldn't be. Saturdays were for errands, waxing appointments, brunch, long walks with her AirPods in. Once, I'd asked where she always went. She laughed and said, "I need space. You wouldn't understand." She was right. I didn't. Not then. I walked the perimeter of the house, quietly, room by room. I wasn't looking for anything. I just needed to feel the edges of the place one more time. The molding I installed myself in the den. The scratch in the hardwood from when we moved her piano in. The hallway mirror that still hung crooked because it felt more artsy that way. The dog barked next door. The wind moved the chimes. Somewhere in the distance, a kid yelled, "Mom!" And I realized as I stood in the guest room, the one I was never allowed to paint, that I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry either. It was something colder, deeper, like the moment before a dive, when your body knows it's about to hit the water and just accepts it. On my way out, I glanced once more at the front door. The wreath was still up, even though it was from last season. She said it gave the house charm. I thought it looked desperate, like it was trying to convince the world it hadn't already been abandoned from the inside. I didn't leave a note. She wasn't owed one. Instead, I grabbed the manila folder from the bottom drawer of my old roll-top desk, the one she said clashed with the modern aesthetic. It was labeled in neat block letters, pinned by my hand 8 years ago, Victor Agreement, Joint House Clause, Trigger File. I put it in my leather satchel, the one with the scuff from my Denver trip, walked outside, and locked the door behind me for the last time. Not once did I look back, because the war was over, and she'd fired the last shot herself, with a smirk, a shirt strap, and a goddamn emoji. She laughed. Not a private giggle. No, this was full volume, red wine in hand, toss your head back laughter, the kind she reserved for brunches with her circle of divorcees and dating app optimists. Over a mimosa she didn't pay for, she told them all. He finally gave up. Took him long enough. And they, those well-practiced veterans of yoga retreats and manifesting seminars, all hummed in approval. "You deserve peace," one said. "New energy," chimed another. "He was dragging you down," a third offered. Fork paused mid-avocado toast. She smiled into her drink. "He'll be back," she added. "They always come back. Probably sleeping in his truck right now." She was half right. I wasn't sleeping in my truck. I wasn't couch surfing. I wasn't spiraling or drinking or composing angry monologues to no one in the mirror. I wasn't even talking about it. I was downtown, in a small but well-appointed office on the 11th floor of a building whose windows hummed with old electricity and quiet power. The kind of place no one photographs, but everyone fears when they see the return address on an envelope. Across from me sat Victor. Victor doesn't wear suits anymore. He wears black. Always. Sweaters in winter, polos in summer. Minimalist watch. Clean desk. His handshake hasn't changed since we met. Firm, brief, and final. Like a man trained to end things. We shook once. He nodded toward the chair. No small talk. Just motion to the thick manila folder already waiting in front of him. "You brought the file?" he asked, like he already knew the answer. I placed the envelope on the table. He slid it open. Inside were 3 printed screenshots. The selfie, the caption, the timestamp. He didn't flinch. Instead, he opened his drawer and pulled out a bound agreement. 10 pages. yellowed slightly at the edges. Dated 6 years ago, the day we started gutting the house. Back when I was too proud to take out another mortgage and too stubborn to delay the kitchen remodel. Victor had fronted the money. A private equity loan, with terms even I hadn't fully appreciated at the time. He laid the document flat, flipped to the clause, highlighted in dull orange ink. Section 8. Trigger clause, marital dissolution via infidelity. In the event that the primary occupant, spouse A, vacates the property due to verified infidelity on the part of spouse B, all ownership rights shall transfer to investor party, Victor L. Price, upon submission of said proof and agreement by spouse A. No contest shall be recognized if proof is publicly submitted by spouse B in any format identifiable by name, location, or shared property. He tapped the clause once. No drama, no glee, just clarity. She submitted proof herself. Timestamped. Geotagged. Public. No password protection. I nodded. Victor flipped the last page of the agreement and slid it toward me. Then all I need, he said, is your signature. And that's when I remembered how this clause came to be. Back when we were stripping the place down to studs, she'd wanted imported tile. I wanted to pay off the HVAC loan first. We argued. She sulked. I gave in. But the budget didn't stretch that far. I needed Victor. He agreed, but only if we drafted a joint ownership clause with built-in legal triggers. I didn't argue, because I didn't think I'd ever use it. Back then, she was still humming in the kitchen while painting her own cabinet doors. It felt impossible that this would end in signatures and silence. But it hadn't ended. It had evolved. I signed in black ink. Neat. Controlled. Just below my printed name. Victor stood, walked to the side cabinet, pulled out a portable notary kit, set it on the desk. I'll have the title company file the ownership change by Monday, he said. I raised an eyebrow. You kept the notary kit all these years. He smirked. Just slightly. You're not the only one who plans ahead. He signed. The seal went down with a satisfying thunk of certainty. I exhaled. Not relief. Something sharper. Because this wasn't revenge. This was removal. A surgical extraction of what no longer served its purpose. And all it took was a selfie, a smile, and a contract no one thought mattered anymore. Except me. And Victor. She wore white to the first meeting with the realtor. White blouse, white phone case, white designer sneakers with the little gold logo that caught the light just right when she crossed her legs. Her sunglasses stayed perched on her head like a tiara. Her iced coffee matched her nail polish. And when she talked about staging the space for maximum flow, she used a tone like she was already auditioning for her own HGTV spinoff. The realtor, Ryan, mid-30s, way too tan for February, nodded along like a Labrador with a license. She told him she was exploring opportunities, maybe downsizing, maybe investing elsewhere. What she didn't say, what she never needed to say, was that her husband was gone, her bed was now shared, and she was ready to liquidate love. As one of her Instagram captions so helpfully phrased it under a photo of her posing in the dining room with a measuring tape. She brought in a stager, picked sample palettes, talked about resale psychology and accent walls, and whether the fireplace would pop more if they removed the old stone facade. Every decision was urgent. Every conversation framed like she'd done this before, because in her mind, she had. The house was hers. Emotionally, symbolically, practically. That was her version of the truth. Her friends supported it. You lived there. You built it. You made it a home. She repeated it often enough that it stopped being a justification and became a mantra. So when Ryan called her that Friday afternoon, she barely looked up from the throw pillow display she was photographing. Hey, quick thing, he said, his tone still casual. I ran the initial title lookup like we talked about. Nothing big, just basic pre-listing prep, you know? Yeah, of course, she replied breezy. Want me to send you the old purchase agreement? Well, that's the thing. It's not showing you as the current owner on the main registry. Not directly. She paused. What do you mean not directly? Like, there's a joint ownership listed, but the active title holder isn't your name. She rolled her eyes, smiling to herself. That's probably old. We did a weird refinance like 5 years ago. It must not have updated. I'll dig up the paperwork. Ryan gave a nervous chuckle. Yeah, maybe. But I also checked the last recorded transaction. There's a transfer document filed last week. Not to you. That made her stop walking. Last week. Yeah. Just weird, right? Probably clerical stuff. I'll call the title office and pull a deeper record. No big deal. She brushed it off with a laugh. Honestly, you sound more worried than I am. But after they hung up, she didn't go back to the pillows. She stood in the middle of the room, Her living room, where she once told him the sectional was non-negotiable, and something cold crept up her spine. She shook it off, told herself it was nerves. Selling a home is stressful. Everyone says so. The next morning, she was back at it, picking doorknobs, arguing with the stager about whether or not the piano should stay. She texted Ryan once. Any update? He didn't reply. 3 hours later, her phone rang. His voice was different now. Stiff. Hesitant. Hi. So I've got something. I pulled the updated record. She smiled again, reflexively. Let me guess. Still says someone else owns it, right? These offices never update on time. There was a pause. Too long. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It has been updated. She felt her chest tighten. Not panic. Not yet. Just a flicker. Like a thermostat clicking over 1 degree too high. Updated to what? He exhaled. Ma'am, who is Victor Price? Silence. Then her voice low. Excuse me? Victor Price. He's listed as the sole owner. The transfer was filed Monday. It's signed, sealed, notarized. Official. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because something inside her was beginning to move. Something deep and slow and unfamiliar. She hung up without saying goodbye. The phone slid from her hand onto the coffee table. Outside, a bird hit the window and flew off. Inside, the woman who thought she knew how stories ended stared at a blank space on the wall where her framed wedding photo used to hang. And for the first time, she realized. She hadn't just been replaced. She'd been erased. The title office was beige in the way only government-adjacent buildings can manage. Non-committal walls, cheap laminate floors, the hum of fluorescent lights that seemed allergic to personality. A small potted plant on the front desk had long since given up. So had the receptionist, judging by the way she barely glanced up as Victor approached. He didn't wear a tie. Didn't need one. Just a dark charcoal jacket, black shirt, and a leather portfolio tucked neatly under his arm. He moved like someone used to finishing things, not starting them. Someone who didn't talk until necessary, and then only once. The clerk, a young woman with chipped lavender nail polish and an efficient ponytail, looked up when he handed her the documents. She glanced at the name on the file. Victor Price. Yes. She took the folder and opened it. Inside, 3 color printouts. The first, a full screenshot of the now viral story post. Bedroom. Shoulder. Caption. The second, metadata. Timestamps, IP address confirmation. Public-facing URL. The third, the clause, highlighted, notarized, signed by both original parties. Dated. Page stamped. She read silently. Her brow furrowed somewhere between the clause and the selfie. Then her eyes flicked back to him, briefly. You're initiating a private deed transfer under an equity trigger clause. Yes. She nodded. Proof of trigger? He tapped the page. The photo is the proof. Date stamped. Shared publicly by the party in breach. Clause 8. All conditions met. She said nothing for a beat. Then, quietly, you don't see many of these clauses actually get used. Victor didn't reply. He didn't need to. The woman scanned the documents with that practiced bureaucracy speed only clerks and funeral directors possess. Her printer hissed to life. She placed the seal on the final transfer form and turned the clipboard toward him. He signed. Black ink. Smooth, practiced motion. No hesitation. She countersigned. Initialed. Sealed. Congratulations, she said, not quite knowing whether to mean it. You now own 425 Marigold Lane. Full title. No encumbrances. He gave a polite nod. As she began filing the paperwork into the system, a soft ding echoed from the desk beside hers. A digital alert. She clicked it. Her screen lit up. Ah, she said, half to herself. Realtor contact's been auto-notified. Victor didn't react. 35 blocks away, Ryan, the perpetually tan realtor, stood in front of his laptop, scanning the email that had just arrived. Subject, title update, 425, Marigold Lane. He clicked, and there it was. New owner of record, Victor L. Price. The breath caught in his throat. He read it again, then a third time. That's when he noticed the timestamp, filed 11:47 a.m. He looked at his watch. 11:49. He picked up the phone. Before he could dial, a voice behind him said, "You okay?" It was his assistant. She'd just returned with lunch. He turned to her slowly, blinking. Have you ever had a deal go so sideways you started wondering if you were part of a long con? She laughed. Like, planned out in advance. He nodded, staring at the screen. Yeah, like years in advance. Back at the title office, the clerk handed Victor a final receipt. A thin, heat-printed confirmation of ownership transfer. No fanfare. No flourish. Just proof. She hesitated, then asked, "Was this premeditated?" Victor looked up, expression unreadable. Only the truth was planned. Then he turned, tucked the folder under his arm, and walked out the glass doors into the afternoon sun. Behind him, the system updated. Legally, irrevocably, quietly. The house was no longer hers. And she didn't even know yet. The stemware sparkled like it was auditioning for a magazine spread. She made sure of that. Hand-polished every glass herself. Even replaced the bulb in the chandelier so the lighting hit just right. Presentation mattered, especially tonight. The kitchen smelled like lemon rosemary chicken and performative success. Bottles of wine lined the granite counter like trophies. Laughter floated up from the living room. The kind of carefully curated joy that comes when everyone's pretending they're not comparing themselves to the hostess. They were all sitting in her house, the one she now referred to as her investment property. Eating food she plated with Pinterest precision, toasting to a future she hadn't earned but fully expected. "I swear," one of her friends said, swirling her wine. "If you actually list this place, it's going to sell in 3 days. Maybe 2. Another added, "It's the vibe, girl. Like, divorcee, but luxury. Your ex must be punching the air." She laughed loudly at that. "He's not exactly in a punching mood these days." They all chuckled. She lifted her glass. "To new beginnings," she said, her voice smooth with practiced elevation. The glasses clinked. And then the phone rang. She glanced down. Ryan, realtor. She pressed a finger to her lips and slipped onto the back deck. The string lights were on. The cushions were arranged. The illusion held, even out here. She answered with a smile in her voice. "Ryan, are you calling with good news?" There was a pause on the other end. "Too long." "Then, ma'am." I pulled the updated title. She sighed, almost annoyed. "Yes, we talked about this. The glitch, or whatever it was. I sent you that old refinance doc, remember?" Another pause. "No, this is not a glitch." She leaned against the railing, swirling her glass. "Okay, so what is it?" He didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost all the cocky realtor gloss. "I just need to ask, who is Victor Price?" She stopped swirling. "Excuse me." "Victor Price," he repeated, slower this time. "He's listed as the sole owner on the title. As of Monday, there's a transfer filed, notarized, and finalized. Your name isn't on it anymore." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She looked back through the glass door. The house looked perfect. It felt like hers. It was full of laughter, music, flattery. The wine was flowing. The chicken was still hot. But now it felt borrowed. "No," she said, sharp now. "That's not possible. There's no way. I live here." "I know," Ryan said, his voice getting smaller. "But legally, you don't. Not anymore." She didn't move. The wine in her hand tilted slightly. The string lights buzzed faintly above her. "Victor Price," she whispered. The name didn't ring any bells. Not really. It floated in her mouth like a code she couldn't crack. "Look," Ryan continued, voice more careful now. "I don't know what's going on, but this isn't standard. I've never seen a transfer like this. Everything's airtight. Signed, stamped, filed. I even called the title clerk myself." She didn't respond. He added, more gently, "Maybe talk to your husband? Or ex?" The word landed like a slap. "Ex." She ended the call without another word and stood alone in the golden haze of decorative lighting. Inside, someone called out, "Hey, where's more wine?" She didn't answer. Her hand trembled, just once. She tightened her grip. She looked around the deck. The potted ferns, the teak furniture, the monogrammed welcome mat she had custom ordered from Etsy. It was all arranged for show. But now it felt like someone else's stage. Victor Price. The name echoed, unfamiliar and yet sharp-edged. She looked at her phone again, then at the house. Her house, still brimming with compliments and illusions. And suddenly, for the first time in her carefully staged little world, she realized. She had no idea who was really holding the keys. She didn't even say goodbye to her guests. The moment she stepped back inside, she moved like a ghost, drifting past the dining table, ignoring the empty wine bottles and half-finished jokes still bouncing between walls she now suspected weren't hers. She didn't even glance at the woman laughing loudly about the guy with the terrible tie on hinge, or the man pouring himself a second glass of her best red. None of it mattered anymore. She made it to the bedroom, their bedroom, where that now infamous photo had been taken, and yanked open her laptop like it had personally betrayed her. The screen flared to life. The real estate dashboard should have greeted her by name. It always did. "Welcome back, Elizabeth." She waited for it. Instead, access denied. Account disabled. Contact administrator. She refreshed. Same result. Again and again. Then she clicked the title database portal directly. Entered the property ID. She'd done this 3 times last week, just to be ahead of the stager's requests. It always worked. But now, this record has been restricted. Please contact the county title office for access. Her hands began to shake. Not visibly, not yet. But inside, something buckled. She called the title office. Hold music. She paced the room, kicking off her shoes, muttering under her breath. It's a mistake. It's just a mistake. Bureaucrats are useless. Finally, a voice answered. Female, calm. Too calm. County Title Services, how may I assist you? I need to verify ownership for a property. For 25, Marigold Lane. Name, Elizabeth Halberd. Should be under Halberd or Elizabeth Monroe, depending on how it's indexed. I filed the original co-ownership with she stopped herself, with my husband. A while back. There was a pause. Typing. I'm sorry, ma'am. That property is currently listed under a different name. A chill crawled down her spine. What name? Victor Price. She inhaled sharply. No, that's not right. That's a mistake. There must have been a clerical error. I can verify the filing date, the woman said gently. Fine. Filed Monday morning. Executed by joint party agreement. Supporting documentation submitted with signed trigger clause. No, she said louder now. You don't understand. This is my house. I live here. I've lived here for 11 years. He left. I stayed. The utilities are in my name. My sheets are on the bed. I understand, ma'am. But the legal title has transferred. No, that's impossible. You can't just take a house. I didn't sign anything. I didn't approve a sale. You don't need to. According to the clause, only one party needs to act if the trigger is met and verified. What trigger? She snapped. There was another pause. Then, the clause refers to infidelity. She couldn't breathe. The woman added, there's also a digital affidavit, notarized. Your husband signed it. The day after the date listed on the photographic evidence. It took her a moment. Then she remembered. The selfie. The story. Upgrade complete. She hung up without a word. Just ended the call and stood there in the quiet room, surrounded by the silence of a house already slipping through her fingers. She pulled up the county's public filing system. Searched the address. There it was. Title transfer. Victor L. Price, sole owner. She clicked the document. PDF loaded. Her own name, once printed on that deed, was now gone. Struck like a typo. And just above the seal, she saw it. Signature of initiating party, Thomas Halberd. Her husband's name. Signed in calm, steady ink. Dated the day after the selfie. The morning she'd gone to brunch with her friends and joked about finally being free. She called him. It rang once. Then straight to voicemail. Not even a message. Not even a chance to beg. She sat down hard on the edge of the bed, suddenly aware that even the mattress beneath her might not belong to her anymore. The walls, the floors, the locks, none of it answered to her. Her phone buzzed with a group text. Babe, that dinner was amazing. When are you listing? Smiling face with hard eyes. She didn't answer. She just stared at the closet, half hers, half empty, and for the first time in her adult life, understood what it meant to exist in a space that no longer acknowledged her presence. The floor didn't creak beneath her anymore. It held her like a stranger. She didn't bother calling ahead. Didn't ask for an appointment. Didn't check the time. She just drove, hair pulled back in a rushed bun, no makeup, hoodie thrown over whatever she'd been wearing when the illusion cracked. The traffic lights blurred. She barely noticed. Her hands gripped the steering wheel like she could squeeze sense out of the world if she just held tight enough. She knew where Victor's office was. Everyone did, if they'd been around long enough. Corner building, downtown, the one with the understated lobby that whispered wealth and wiped smiles clean off faces. She pulled up in front, threw the car into park, half in a red zone, and marched through the glass doors like she owned oxygen. Victor's assistant looked up, her expression perfectly professional, almost pleasant. Ms. Halberd, I need to speak with him, Elizabeth snapped. The assistant didn't flinch. One moment. She picked up the phone, said nothing more than she's here, and hung up. 30 seconds later, Victor emerged. No tie, no theatrics. Calm as a winter lake. Elizabeth stepped forward, fire already rising in her throat. What the hell do you think you're doing? Victor didn't blink. He merely motioned to the side conference room. She stormed in first. He followed. The door clicked shut behind him. She whirled. You think you can just take a house because of some stupid contract buried in a renovation file? Victor walked to the table, opened a folder, pulled out a clean, tabbed copy of the agreement. Her signature clear on page 4, directly beneath the trigger clause. He slid it across the table, not like a threat, but like a librarian returning an overdue book. You posted a public admission of infidelity, he said, tone neutral. It triggered the clause. That clause was ancient, she spat. I didn't even remember it existed. Victor nodded. But you did sign it. So did Thomas. This is manipulation, she hissed. You waited. You trapped me. Victor raised an eyebrow. No. I honored the contract. You breached it. Publicly. Willingly. On your own platform. Time-stamped. Location tagged. Bedroom identifiable. She opened her mouth, but he didn't stop. You captioned it. Upgrade complete. That's not an error. That's intent. You don't get to decide what a joke is and what's real. He regarded her a moment, then said, neither do you. That's why we have clauses. She shook her head, desperate. This was my house. I lived there. I paid bills. I hosted Thanksgiving. Victor cut in, quiet but sharp. And when you needed money for the second remodel, you and your husband agreed to private equity funding. I provided it, with stipulations, one of which gave me first right of refusal and ownership in the event of marital breach. He gestured to the contract again. Clause 8. Her eyes darted to the page. She read it again, this time slowly, the words sinking like stones in wet sand. All ownership rights shall transfer to investor party upon submission of public, verifiable evidence of infidelity by spouse B. She dropped the folder. This is insane. No one enforces this kind of thing. Victor folded his hands. I do. There was a long silence. Only the hum of the air vent between them. She stared at him. Then her voice cracked, soft, nearly human for the first time. You planned this. You wanted this. He didn't smile. Didn't flinch. No, but I'm a man of terms. She stepped back like she'd been slapped. Rage curdled into something smaller. Something tighter. Humiliation. I didn't even know who you were. Victor nodded. That's what makes this so efficient. She blinked. Excuse me. I'm not the villain. I'm not the hero. I'm the hinge. The thing you never thought would move until it did. He stood, buttoned his jacket. This isn't a negotiation. It's enforcement. He walked to the door and paused. One more thing, Miss Halbert. She didn't respond. Victor turned his head, just enough to speak. If you contact your ex again, or attempt to enter the property without clearance, you'll be trespassing. And I always prosecute trespassers, even the ones who used to decorate the living room. Then he walked out, and she stood alone in the sterile conference room, looking down at a signature she once thought meant nothing. Her own, in black ink, under a clause that now had teeth. He was the type of man who thought volume was power. Tall, built like a gym membership that skipped leg day, wearing shirts that strained at the sleeves and sunglasses indoors. The kind of guy who called waiters boss, posted Instagram stories about grinding, and thought quoting Wolf of Wall Street made him a negotiator. She called him Mason, but his legal name was probably something like Bryce or Chadwick. Victor didn't care enough to look it up. What mattered was the voicemail he left. You think you can just steal someone's house? Mason barked into Victor's voicemail like he was auditioning for a courtroom drama. You think this is over just because you filed some ancient paperwork? I know people. We're getting lawyers. You better be ready to explain your little scheme to a real judge, bro. Victor didn't respond. He never does, verbally. Instead, he played the voicemail once. Then again. Then opened a new email. 2. Redacted at lawpartners.co. CC. County Realtor at titleconfirm.org. Ryan.Miller at marigoldrealty.com. Subject, unauthorized claims and threat of trespass. Attached, a typed transcript of the voicemail with timestamps and caller ID metadata. A second attachment, a legal memo from 3 years ago confirming the clause's enforceability and the deed transfer mechanism. A third, the county file log confirming the title update. The subject line alone did most of the heavy lifting. The final sentence in Victor's email was classic Victor. If Mr. Mason enters the property again, please consider this formal notice of intent to prosecute trespass under Penal Code 602. Then he hit send. By 5:43 p.m., Ryan the realtor received a text from the county title office. FYI, notice of ownership confirmation filed. Associated parties informed. Third-party trespass claim in process. Meanwhile, Elizabeth and Mason were still in the house, pretending like the floorboards hadn't already disowned them. He'd arrived with takeout and bravado, all charm and chest puffed up. Babe, this whole thing's a joke, he'd said, setting plastic bags down on the marble island. Some dusty investor thinks he can pull strings? Please. I've dealt with clowns like that. She clung to his confidence like a life raft. They ate on the couch. Chinese food containers. Wine again. She tried to act like it was still her home, but she flinched when the doorbell rang. Mason rolled his eyes. Probably that stager again. Didn't she leave half her crap here? He opened the door. A sheriff stood on the porch, not in full uniform. This was a courtesy visit. Low-key. Paper in hand. Neutral tone. Evening. I'm here on behalf of the county title registrar. Mason straightened. Is there a problem? The deputy held out the paper. This is a courtesy notice regarding a formal deed transfer on this property. It's been executed, recorded, and finalized. The new owner has issued a no-contact order and filed a statement of intent regarding trespass. Mason laughed. Trespass? I live here. The deputy looked at the paper. You're not listed on the deed. And neither is she. He nodded toward Elizabeth, who had emerged behind Mason, mouth slightly open. This isn't an eviction. Yet, the deputy continued. But the owner has legal authority. He can enforce removal at will. You may want to vacate voluntarily before it escalates. Wait, this is insane, Mason started. You can contest it, the deputy offered. But I suggest doing it from a different address. He tipped his hat and walked away. No yelling. No drama. Just documentation. Back inside, Mason turned to Elizabeth, his voice just a few decibels too loud. You knew about this Victor guy? I didn't know it was real, she snapped. It was years ago. I didn't think. You didn't think? He started pacing. You told me the house was yours. You told me he walked out. He did. Yeah? Then why the hell is my name on a sheriff's courtesy notice? She didn't answer. She couldn't. He shook his head, grabbed his keys, and left without another word. The takeout was still on the table. She sat in silence. No wine tonight. No toast. No friends. Just the realization that the man she tried to replace had erased her, and the man she brought in to replace him was already gone. She parked across the street like a trespasser, engine idling for a full minute before killing it. Her hands didn't move. They just gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles blanched, like she could hold the entire house in place by sheer force of will. It looked the same. That was the worst part. The trimmed hedges, the wreath on the door, now slightly faded. The curtains she picked out at the Spring Home Expo still hung just so, angled to let the light pour across the foyer tiles. From the outside, it was hers. Every square foot bore her fingerprints, her color swatches, her imagined future. But her name? Gone. She crossed the street slowly, keys in one hand, resignation in the other. She didn't bother ringing the bell. She still had a key, though she knew it wouldn't work for long. To her surprise, the door was open. Not wide. Just enough. She stepped inside. The air smelled different. Not bad. Just sterile. Like it had been aired out deliberately. The kind of clean that follows closure. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. Not hers. She turned the corner and saw him. Victor. Walking beside a man in khakis with a clipboard. Some kind of home inspector. Probably checking foundation levels or insulation specs. The two were mid-conversation, casual, as if discussing a hotel remodel. Victor glanced at her, but didn't stop walking. She raised her voice. I just need time. He paused. Checked his watch. 1 hour, he said flatly. After that, the locks change. She scoffed. You can't be serious. Victor didn't blink. You have 58 minutes now. She wanted to argue. Wanted to scream. But what would she say? That the walls owed her something? That the staircase remembered her footsteps? Instead, she walked past him, shoulders stiff, into the bedroom. The same room where it all started. Where she took that photo. Where she smiled at the lens, smug and satisfied. Captioned it with a joke she thought was clever. Upgrade complete. Now, the bed was stripped. The duvet gone. Only the mattress remained, flattened slightly in the middle like even it had given up. The vanity stood empty. No perfume. No stray earrings. Just a faint dust line where her jewelry box used to sit. She ran a hand along the dresser edge. It didn't greet her. It tolerated her. From the hallway, she could hear Victor and the inspector moving from room to room, talking plumbing, roof integrity, zoning upgrades. Like she didn't exist. She walked back into the hall as Victor approached the master bath. She couldn't help herself. She said it softly. He sent you. Victor stopped. For the first time, he actually looked at her. Not with contempt. Not with pity. Just fact. He didn't need to, he said. I saw the post. He adjusted the folder in his hand. I owed him. A pause. And I always pay my debts. He turned and continued walking. She stood in place, spine brittle. Owed him, she whispered to no one. A flash of memory hit. A cookout 4 summers ago. Thomas and Victor by the grill, talking low and fast, laughing. Something about college days, about a favor repaid someday. She hadn't listened. She was too busy photographing the potato salad for Instagram. Now the debt had come due, and she was the payment. She moved mechanically through the rest of the house, gathering what little hadn't been boxed already. A few books, a coat, a set of baking pans she knew no one would ever use again. Everything else, left behind, because it wasn't hers. It never had been, not really. Victor didn't follow her out, didn't say goodbye, just kept moving through the house like he'd lived there longer than she ever had. And maybe, in a way, he had. She stepped out the front door. No one watched her leave. No neighbors peeked through blinds. The world just kept spinning. As she shut the door behind her, a small click echoed back, a sound that meant nothing to anyone else. But to her, it was the sound of a house no longer recognizing her scent. The mattress was thinner than memory allowed, lumpy in the wrong places, stained in one corner. The friend she was staying with, Amanda, had apologized profusely. "It's just temporary, babe. You'll bounce back. You always do. But bouncing requires force." And Elizabeth had none left. The spare room was a sunroom, really, converted awkwardly, with curtains that didn't quite close and a rug that curled up at the edges like it was afraid of her. Her clothes lived in 2 reusable grocery bags. Her shoes, once arranged like boutique displays, now sat in a plastic bin beside an IKEA desk that wobbled when touched. No one called. Not anymore. Mason hadn't texted since the night of the sheriff's visit. She tried to explain. Tried to tell him Victor had manipulated something ancient and unfair. But Mason didn't care about legal nuance. He cared about appearances. And disappearing. She tried reaching out to Ryan, the realtor. Just a friendly, "Hey, sorry if things got messy. Maybe we can reset?" He never responded. By then, word had gotten around. Realtors talk. Title offices whisper. Assistants relay details they pretend not to have overheard. A woman who tries to sell a house she no longer owns? That's professional poison. So she scrolled real estate apps now, not as an owner, but as a voyeur. A browser in exile. It happened late one evening. She was lying flat, wrapped in a throw blanket that smelled like vanilla and dust. Her phone buzzed once. New listing alert. 425, Marigold Lane. Her thumb hovered. She stared at the notification longer than necessary. Then she tapped. The screen loaded slowly, as if mocking her. The address. The photo. She blinked. The house looked better. Crisper. Sharper. The walkway had been pressure washed. The hedges trimmed. A new front door, darker wood, brass hardware. The windows gleamed. And there, standing side by side on the front steps, Victor and Thomas, both in dark blazers, shaking hands, calm, confident, the kind of image that screamed quiet power. The caption beneath the photo read, "Renovation underway. Legacy preserved." She dropped the phone. It hit the wood floor with a dull slap. She didn't scramble to pick it up, just stared at the ceiling, chest hollow, eyes dry. That phrase echoed. Legacy preserved. Not hers. His. He'd never raised his voice, never made a scene, never chased her down or begged her to explain. He'd just moved with precision, with allies, with contracts. And she, who had posted one photo, smug in public, had deleted it days later. But the internet remembers. So do deeds. So do friends like Victor. There was no vengeance, no destruction, just subtraction. She'd been removed, cleanly. And now, she was a footnote in someone else's house. Because she thought she upgraded. But the house upgraded her. Right out of the story.